who likes to move entire buildings for whenever he moves his studio. I like to just move rooms, but I'm coming to you live with the man, the myth, the Barbie to my Ken, I'll say, because he's definitely more the star than I am. Mr. Travis Croft, how are you?
I am fine and dandy, and I think it's fair to say we are both Knuff. It's just accept it and for what it is. Nice to be back on time this time. On our 2 weekly rotation, and we haven't had a cancellation, and no one's house has collapsed.
It's true. God hasn't stepped in and said, excuse me, I actually planned the apocalypse for this week. Sorry.
Excuse me, but yeah, it's so uncool. Who's these people who have extra rooms in their house to go and use for stuff? I shot it. I would like to point out our perhaps unintentional or reluctant co-host for this week. Over here. This thing's alive.
Oh, it's not just a cushion.
Not part of a chair. That is part of a cat who's a little bit annoyed, but I just bothered them. So I'm going to step away now.
If Travis is not alive next episode, you know what happened, ladies and gentlemen. He paid the price.
This is Gatita, our household overlord, a.k.a. cat. And I am getting a greaser right now. How dare I disturb her sleep?
You bitch. You bitch, sir. You bitch.
We best just keep moving before I incur her wrath entirely and say...
Absolutely.
Yeah, a bit of a mixed bag this week.
Yeah, we've got quite a popcorn rainbow movie show for you. We have got our chain movie of the week, following on from last time's Bringing Out the Dead, very dour, very down, Martin Scorsese, Nicolas Cage movie. We followed John Goodman on to the 2008 Wachowski siblings love letter to Speed Racer, which is, I remember when that first came out, it was one of the first movies I think that kind of came out in 60 frames a second because of the bright, vibrant color and things like that. We have got our thoughts on the first half of Barbenheimer Barbie. And we are going to be talking about, this time so many years ago, we landed on the Dan Aykroyd starring Coneheads. Not to mention, we've got a little bit of binge, browse, and burn. And if we have time, if we're not going to run too long, which invariably we are, we may very well talk about the end of existing IP. Did promise that last time.
Yeah, we do what we can, but should we just keep moving while you're talking? You gave us a heads up there. I picked it. I'm responsible. Should we talk about Speed Racer? Someone has to do it. Why not us?
Go Speed Racer.
So, this is the 2008, as you mentioned, the Wachowski siblings. So, interestingly, this is the last film where they are credited as the Wachowski brothers.
Yes.
Young driver Speed Racer aspires to be champion of a racing world for help with his family and his high-tech Mach 5 automobile. This is based on is it an anime? I don't know. Japanese cartoon.
I think it started off as a manga and then it became a very, very popular anime. But yes, it's definitely this is one of those kind of earlier adaptations of a Japanese property that Hollywood tried to westernize, I think, really.
Well, yes, they haven't done it terribly successfully since then. Do not mention Ghost in the Shell.
And do not Death Note.
I didn't even see that one. So that sounds like a good thing. So did you ever watch the cartoon?
No, I never. It never kind of crossed my path.
I think it was on TV here, and it's interesting that we grew up on such a. I don't know about you in the UK, but in Australia, we grew up on a steady diet of westernized Japanese cartoons. You know, Battle on the Planets, Ulysses 31, and I think it was a show called Silverhawks that used to be on TV when I was a kid. I fucking loved Silverhawks. The Lost Cities of Gold, which was a Japanese French cartoon. There was a lot of that kind of thing on TV. Speed Racer was one of them. I was never a massive fan of Speed Racer, but I do vaguely remember the cartoon. But the Wachowskis, they not only remember this cartoon, they fucking adore this cartoon. Now, this is the first thing they released. I talked about this a couple weeks ago. This is their first release after the Matrix trilogy, when you could rightly expect they could have written their own ticket to anything they wanted to do in Hollywood after those. Even though the parts 2 and 3 were certainly no match for the first, I suspect, without looking, they did enough business to keep them well and truly in the good books of Hollywood. This is what they decided to do with their newfound clout, was to get this made. And honestly, I don't know that it would have got made without that kind of clout, because it's a really unusual film.
Oh, yeah.
All the way while I was that's your synopsis. Young driver Speed Racer aspires to be part of a racing world to help with his family. So the Speed Racer is played by Emil Hirsch. His name is Speed Racer, which is possibly, and I forgot that about this show or whatever. And I'm like, that is the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard in my fucking life. His name's Speed Racer. His family, his dad is his mechanic, I guess, the guy who builds his car, played by John Goodman. His brother, I'm looking for his brother here. I can't see who actually played his brother.
The young one, you mean? With the monkey, Chim Chim? What is his name?
Australian actor Kik Gurry plays not a member of a family, part of, I guess, of a family racing team. His girlfriend is played by Christina Ricci as Trixie. And he's sometimes ally, Racer X, played by Matthew Fox. One of the few really good turns of acting in this film is the bad guy. Like, the bad guy in this absolutely chews the scenery in every single scene that they are in. And it's what's the Alarm? What's his name here? Roger Alarm plays Royalton, who is, I think, the principal bad guy of the film. And he is the owner of a large corporate conglomerate racing team who tries to recruit Speed, but upon being knocked back, basically makes it his mission to take down and destroy Speed Racer, which, by bankrupting his family and getting him kicked out of the World Racing League or whatever it's called. And
which let's just talk about that as the real crux of the incident here. It's not because, he doesn't turn on Speed Racer because Speed is gonna expose the corrupt nature of Royalton Industries or anything like that. It's just because he said no.
Yeah.
It's just pure spite that this guy just goes, okay, I'm going to literally destroy your world.
I think Roger Alarm is one of the few people who realizes what kind of film he's in. Yeah. And I suspect the other person who does is John Goodman. Not sure about the rest of them. You said this last time. I think you really nailed it. You compared this to Ang Lee's Hulk film, which was trying very hard to go. He's kind of gone, what would a comic book look like if we turned that into a film with the frames and the shading and the little clips and the transition from scene to scene, which was interesting, but didn't really quite work. And I wonder if they did it 7 or 8 years later after Iron Man, maybe, but also it just wasn't a good film. But you can see what they were trying to do, and you've gone, that's interesting. And this is basically a live action cartoon.
Oh yeah, with the amount of editing work on this, my goodness, all of the kind of the spinning heads as they're going from one side to the other, that's very anime. The blurring of all the color as they're racing, every single thing is just, they've just gone, okay, what does it look like on the page? What does it look like in the comics? Let's just do that.
And that is a very deliberate choice by the filmmakers. This is not, we want to say it costs, again, this is Wachowski's. This is post Matrix. I think they got the budget they asked for. I would have, or something pretty close to it, I would imagine, because, I mean, this has got a $120 million budget in 2008. So that's a pretty decent sort of budget for the time.
But
so the fact that they use green screens for 90% of a film, not 100% of a film,
Yep.
does give it that really artificial look.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I'm sure that that's actually a deliberate choice. Now, coming back to Roger Alarm, I think he realizes he's doing a live action cartoon. So just to give you some context, just to come back to a second, The Incredible Hulk came out in 2008. That had a $150 million production budget. So this is, up there with a major studio release like that. So they did the green screen stuff deliberately to make it look like that flat look, like a cartoon. The incredibly oversaturated colors, the ridiculous nature of the action.
Yeah.
It's a live action cartoon, but I feel like Emil Hirsch and so many other people think they're in like a real movie and they're acting their asses off. And I'm like, no, it's like Roger Alarm gets it. He's like, I'll get you, Gadget, next time, Gadget.
Exactly. He is the mustachio twirling, stereotypical 70s and 80s bad guy ripped out of those comics and cartoons and just put into a live action movie. And it would be like someone going full Mark Hamill Joker in live action. It's that level of energy and mania. And then suddenly you've got the dourness of Emil Hirsch. I'm like, nothing else makes sense except when I'm behind the wheel of a T-180. It's like, oh, dude, come on.
I mean, that said, though, from what I recall about the cartoon, that was Speed's character. So maybe that was the point. But so many of the others just seem to play it with a straight bat. Where I mean, I felt like John Goodman was doing it as well. I loved John Goodman as Pops in his film. He again was really hamming it up. And looked like they were enjoying themselves, like as you sort of said, in mustachio twirling bad guy, and sort of him as the dad character, which is such a typical dad character in Japanese animation. So some of it works in that sense. Like Roger Alarm is the way over the top bad guy, and his facial expressions, his sneer of anger. I'm like, oh, I love it. Every minute he's on screen, he's so bad. I want to see him get taken down so badly, and that's perfect. I felt also like the racing sequences kind of worked. I mean, again, if you take yourself back for a second, realize you're watching a cartoon that just happens to have been done live action, which is weird. But the racing scenes I felt were some of the stronger points, especially the cross-country race scene where Speed has to win the cross-country race in order to qualify for the big Grand Prix race at the end. The problem maybe there is it's a little bit too much of a good thing. I thought they maybe spent too much time on some of the racing. But I can see why, considering it was I felt it was reasonably strong. What did you think of the race scenes?
I think the race scenes were great, and I think they really captured, like, a lot of people think about Star Wars Episode 1 and the pod racing sequences. It's like, okay, there were tiny elements of one lap that they did, and then they just replayed footage of that for the next 2 laps. There was elements of that, but this was exciting and fun. If you just remember, this is a completely unrealistic world with cars built the same that they're made in France. If you look at John Wick, for example, they're very bouncy. And this is a movie for kids. Let's just be very, very clear on that. From everything from the color to Speed's younger brother and Chim Chim, their antics, all of that stuff. This is the Wachowskis doing a kids movie for the first time. And the race sequences of that are exhilarating for a kid, because you're never more than 3 seconds from something insane going, whether they're going to flip or do something, and an absurd kind of Rube Goldberg machine thing is going to fire out from someone trying to get Speed, and he gets out of the way, and it's kinetic, frenetic energy that just works because of the way that it's shot, the use of color, and it feels like they're going bloody fast too. But then that is the Achilles heel of it as well, because as soon as it get to sequences out of the cars, it's like
it just goes to a crawl, and the character scenes don't work because why would they? They're 2-dimensional cartoon characters, and we don't care about really anybody other than probably Speed Racer if you're again, a
Mm.
kid. And you again, that's a good point. This is a kid's film. It just doesn't look like it was marketed as a kid's film. I mean,
Mm-mm.
you've got two of the Wachowskis who directed some of the most cerebral action films ever made for their, well, probably still.
Mm.
The concepts of and the philosophy of the Matrix films, especially parts 2 and 3,
Mhm.
are incredibly impenetrable in parts, but worthy of multiple viewings to try and understand them. Michelle will tell you the second one's her favorite of the Matrix films, and the storytelling concepts included are fascinating to her and a lot of people. But
Mm.
to then transition from that to a live action kids cartoon,
It's kind
um,
of whiplash.
it's fine to do it, I guess, in a way. When we're going to talk about Greta Gerwig in a minute. Like, you look
Mhm.
at Little Women 4 years ago, Little Women to
Yeah.
Barbie,
Yeah.
but I guess they just didn't market it that way for this film. I guess we were expecting something with a little bit more subtext. Also, it's
Yeah.
2 hours and 15 minutes.
Yeah. It's too long, which should be our tagline. But honestly, you talked about it, and you hypothesized before when you picked this movie. It's like we look back at the other movies that Wachowskis have done, and how so much of it is kind of subcontext of their own journeys and their own struggles with going through transgendering and things like that. You said, "Oh, I wonder if there's anything here." Nope,
No,
capitalism bad.
no, there's nothing here.
That's it. It is vapid for anything else. So when you have the Wachowskis on there, coming off of, as you say, three of the most make you think action movies of the last 15, 20 years, you suddenly go, wait, what, you want me to just sit back and watch it and then be entertained rather than actually come out of it going,
Yeah, there's no subtext here at all. I'm sorry about that. And I
Yeah.
feel like I should apologize. There's nothing going on under the surface of this film other than the fact that those filmmakers obviously deeply, deeply love the source material and burned a lot of their clout in Hollywood to make this film.
Mhm.
That the runtime is unforgivable.
Yes.
Unforgivable for a story as thin as this to try and stretch it to 2 hours and 15 minutes is outrageous. And again, that speaks probably to the kind of clout the filmmakers had in Hollywood at the time. That
Mm.
who was going to tell the Wachowskis cut half an hour out of your Speed Racer film after what they just delivered? Obviously, no one. So
Yep.
it's for a kids' film, it had to be what 90, 100 minutes max.
Yep.
And that's half an hour less than this. And I don't know what they were thinking. So this is when I come back again to the idea that they were spending perhaps a little too long on their race scenes, even though they were good. And I enjoyed the strong word. I enjoyed parts of them. They just spent so long on them.
Mm-hmm.
It just got to be beyond a joke, and it ended up costing the film at the end. And I would just like to concentrate on some of the negatives beside the inordinately long runtime. You mentioned Chim Chim. What the actual fuck was? I was like 10 minutes into this film, like, oh my god, there's a monkey in this film. What the hell are these filmmakers doing? What the hell? I mean, who thought a monkey? When was the last time a monkey being in the film was a good sign? I challenge anyone to give me other than probably the Planet of the Apes films.
Mighty Joe Young.
Don't know if I ever saw that one, but yeah, if it's about a monkey, then
it's
maybe.
about a gorilla. Maybe that's the difference.
So I don't know. I would give that a big negative, a big red cross. No, if there's a monkey.
Yeah.
And really, what did the monkey add to the film that was of any value? Not much. I mean, as you sort of said, the kids were maybe amused by the antics of a monkey and Speed's brother, who I still can't actually find. I don't know what his character
or something.
I can't remember what his character's name was, actually.
I found it before. Spritle. Actor is poorly lit.
Poorly lit. Okay. Well, sorry, Paulie, if you're watching. But he hasn't done anything since 2017 when he starred in Sex Guaranteed. I don't know. Who would have thought a film called Sex Guaranteed would be a bad career move? I wouldn't have. Um, so the monkey was a negative.
Yeah.
The oversaturation of colors was distracting and kind of gave me a headache. So while it worked in parts, it didn't work in others. And I did kind of give it the green screen's a positive and a negative for me. It looks so flat and fake all the way through the film. I mean, you remember what was it Jude Law film, Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Came out about the same time of I think. And again, that whole idea that you could make an entire film in a studio in front of the green screen was fashionable there for a few years. But I think this is yet another example of where it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, like I said, I think it's a deliberate choice by the filmmakers.
Yeah.
So I'm not but that doesn't mean it's a good thing.
No.
Where it works at the racing scenes for somehow, like the racing scenes seems really kinetic and action filled and moderately entertaining. Anything aside from those, it just drags the film down a long, long way.
For me, I feel like this movie is kind of ahead of its time. And if they had waited like 15 years, got it like to this decade, I think we may have seen a slightly different kind of movie. I feel like they may have done it more as, all right, you know what? He's not going to win the Grand Prix in this movie. It's going to be the cross country rally. They're talking about how that goes through three different hemisphere, two different hemispheres and three different kind of landscapes of frozen and desert and all of that sort of stuff. I feel like nowadays they would probably start from at the start of that race and the movie would end at the end of that race with him winning and pepper through some of the backstory and elements throughout it to keep it a little bit of that element of a chase movie effectively. And I think that the animation would have come into it a lot more, and it could very well have been a very hyper-stylized rotoscoping, kind of a combination of Scanner Darkly and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, where they have that vibrant visual look, but still with that slight level of realism and actor in it. I can imagine that being something that they would try to do instead. But even then, I still don't know if it would work.
It was a stretch. I mean, again, if you just focused on what this was as a kids' film, better special effects would have worked. A director with a sense of moderation and keeping it under an hour 40 would have worked. Realizing that you can't. What I always find interesting about Wachowski's was, and it's a side thing that never happens on the show. I remember when The Matrix came out, that changed everything. When it came to film, it changed everything. I think people, if you're young enough to not be around when that came out, you don't realize how revolutionary that film was. In the sense that I feel like maybe 6 months to a year later, Mission Impossible 2 came out. And maybe it was a little later, but not too long afterwards, Mission Impossible 2 came out after the Matrix, the first Matrix film came out. And
Mission Impossible 2, yeah.
So a couple of years, maybe 18 months or so. But like, I remember seeing that at the cinema, and people forget that's like the Mission Impossible film we don't talk about anymore because it's really, I think, the worst one.
Yeah.
And I remember it was the kind of film where, again, it was shot in Australia and Tom Cruise is riding around on a motorcycle and shooting at cars, and it explode when he would shoot them, and like, you remember you going, oh, so boring. This is such an 80s style action film. What John Woo and I guess the producers hadn't realized was that when they were shooting it, I guess, was when The Matrix came out, that changed the game. Those stupid, dumb things that happened in action films in the 80s just didn't make sense anymore for a while, and now they've sort of come back.
Yeah.
But, for 5 minutes there, you're like, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm so bored of this lame 80s style action. It just changed everything. Whereas if that film hadn't existed, that kind of action maybe wouldn't have seemed quite as cliched. As it just changed the game. Whereas this film doesn't seem to have realized that Pixar's happened in the meantime. And that's changed the game as well when it comes to kids' films. Kids' films that are just for kids and have nothing under the surface and are completely dull for adults is gone. It's dead by 2008. We've got
Mm.
at least two Toy Story films, maybe three. I
Yeah.
don't know. Toy Story 3 hadn't come out by 2008, but we had Up, I suspect, by then, and Wall-E had definitely come out about that time as well. So if you're going to make it...
Hadn't come out yet. Wall-E...
Came out in 2008, I think.
Yes. Yeah, 2008.
So, you're going to make a straight-ahead kids film, which is 2 hours and 15 minutes long, but has absolutely nothing to anyone who's not 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're on a hiding to nothing, unfortunately. I feel like I owe you an apology. This was a very difficult watch in parts. While I enjoyed some elements of it, it was just too much of overloading color and too much ridiculousness to work. And I kind of wonder, maybe it would have been better if they just made an animated film.
I feel like it probably would have, but at the same time, I think that 2008 there was still some element of reticence about making just a fully animated movie that doesn't have, maybe in America, Speed Racer isn't as big as studios want it to be, and the idea of it, when you make a kids movie, instantly everyone in that boardroom is suddenly going, okay, how do we make McDonald's toys out of this?
Yes.
And it's like, okay, is there enough cachet in America for Speed Racer kids stuff when you walk into your supermarket?
The thing that's changed here is something like Into the Spider-Verse. But again, Spider-Man has quite a bit of cachet. But Speed Racer doesn't. Interestingly, the news, I don't know if you noticed, J.J. Abrams is rebooting Speed Racer for Apple TV. It was reported in July, actually. So I would like to say that's why I chose the film, but I did not know that until I looked into it a little deeper. But apparently One Piece has also been adapted into live action, which I have heard of.
Yes, it is coming out on Netflix relatively soon.
I would be very curious to see what J.J. Abrams does with it. But don't hold out high hopes for anything Abrams is involved in. But also, if you look at something like Cowboy Bebop, which came out on Netflix a year or two ago, that didn't go well. So we will wait and see. But unless you have anything else with Speed Racer, I'll apologize again and hand the keys over.
I said don't apologize because you don't know where we're going yet. We are going to one of my guilty pleasure movies, and this is one that I haven't seen in a while. And the pure reason why I'm going back to it is I'm curious to see if it is still one of my guilty pleasure movies or if I think that it's kind of trash like most people when it first came out. But on the plus side for you, there are tons of avenues to get out of this movie as well. Literally too many to choose from. We are going to be following Matthew Fox, Racer X. We are going to be going to 2006, Smoking Aces.
I'm not sure I ever saw that.
When a Las Vegas performer turned snitch named Buddy Israel decides to turn state's evidence and testify against the mob, it seems that a whole lot of people would like to make sure he's no longer breathing. This has got Jeremy Piven, Ryan Reynolds, Ray Liotta. Who have we got? We've got Ben Affleck. We've got Peter Berg. We've got Martin Henderson. We've got Common. We've got Andy Garcia. We have got Alicia Keys. Taraji Henson, Nesta Carbonella, Chris Pine, Kevin Durant. We have got Tommy Flanagan. Joel Edgerton's in there. I didn't realize he was in there. Jason Bateman. Matthew Fox is our connective tissue. And it is directed by Joe
Carnahan.
Yeah.
He of films like The A-Team and other films that he was involved in.
Well, he kind of got quite popular. His big breakout, I think, was Narc back in 2002.
I don't even remember it. But he produced The Grey, which you and I went to the movies to see once upon a time.
Yeah.
I think one of the few times I've walked into a cinema with absolutely zero idea about what the film was about, and was disappointed nonetheless.
Yeah, that was
good.
A mess of a movie, but yeah.
Anyway,
so this is go into this not thinking for any kind of like highbrow action entertainment. This is dumb fucking action, pure balls to the wall, dumb fucking action. And we'll see where we go from there.
Excellent. That's good to said. So we're getting some. We had the intellectual level with bringing out the dead, and now we've taken it back down to the gutter where we belong. Damn it,
we know our place.
That's Smoking
Shall
Aces.
We go from one rainbow bright movie to another?
Please, let's do. So we will slide on sideways into Barbie Land on our rollerblades. To the box office juggernaut. Currently the 800-pound gorilla rampaging through box offices everywhere in the world except for South Korea, apparently.
Yep.
Barbie suffers a crisis that leads her to question her world and her existence.
Now, can you talk about the absurdity of this first and foremost? A Barbie movie is doing these ridiculous numbers, and it's not just sort of like, this is a flash in the pan kind of thing. It's not for one demographic. This is across the board. Everyone seems to bloody love this movie.
Not everyone, but a lot of people do. The conservative right in the United States have found it quite objectionable. So there's that. And, I would generally take that as a good sign.
Yeah.
There was a guy doing something on these movie posters on Twitter for Barbie that included some of the comments he found on Letterboxd from Furious Men. And like, let me see.
Why am I so badly respected showcased in this movie?
Barbie, an alienating, dangerous, and perverse film. Barbie, the feminist agenda will kill us all. Barbie, they won't be happy until we are all gay. Barbie, a pink acid trip that feels like being slapped by lots of confusingly attractive people. And I'm like, that is awesome. So, but there are a lot of angry men out there who didn't like it.
Good.
I am wearing a Barbie t-shirt, so I guess, spoiler alert, what did you think of it, though?
I went to go and see this with Lucy, who's 11 years old. We both loved it. Both very, obviously, very different age brackets, demographics. We both found it hugely entertaining, and for very different reasons. Like, I was just restraining myself so much when the Kens were arguing about having a beach off.
I'll beat you off right now.
It was so beautiful. And Lucy was sitting next to me, just kind of looking at me, so like, I know this is an adult joke, isn't it? Yeah. And I was like, yep, you'll get it in a few years, don't worry.
I think what you just said is the absolute genius of what Greta Gerwig has achieved here.
Exactly.
This is
that we've talked about so frequently.
This is, I think, I've actually made the call, but I think this might be the Matrix of our time, in a way. Now, please let me qualify that. Okay. It's obviously a very, very different kind of film to Matrix.
This is what all action movies will look like going forwards. You wait for Barbie clones coming out next summer.
I tried to explain it a minute ago, and I probably did it badly, as I usually do. The Matrix changed the game when it came to action films, which there were a lot of in the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
I would go to the cinema with my friends every couple of weeks and see a new film with Stallone, Van Damme, Schwarzenegger, Bruce Willis, whoever, right? Harrison Ford. Action films were probably, in a way, more common then than they were now. Barbie might do that for IP-driven films, I think, in a way that The Matrix did that for, or at least it was people tried to copy what The Matrix did in action films moving forward. The shit you could get away with, like I said about Mission Impossible 2, just didn't make sense anymore after The Matrix had just proven
Mm.
that The Matrix has pointed out and said 80s action films have no clothes. It's a mixed metaphor, I get it. So this is absolute genius. This film is an absolute genius piece of film in the sense that you can take an 11-year-old who loves I don't know if Lucy loves Barbie,
No.
maybe but she's probably familiar with the brand and the toys, and Lucy can enjoy it on a level of it's bright, it's colorful, it's has songs in it, it's fun.
Yeah.
You and I can see it, and I can see it with Michelle. We saw Barbenheimer, so just to be clear, you'll get the second half of Barbenheimer next week.
We're not made of time. We'll do part 2 later.
We saw the Barbenheimer. We did the Barbenheimer double a couple of weeks ago when it came out. And we were part of a packed cinema, including a number of people who were very well dressed in pink. And funnily enough, this time I wasn't one of them. But we could sit there and so Michelle is one of the most intelligent, sophisticated viewers of film that I know, in the sense that, she'll break down a story into its tiny parts in 5 minutes, and she'll see right through it if it's giving her bullshit. But we not only were we both laughing our asses off at multiple parts of it, including "I'll beat you both off right now," to the part where someone calls Barbie a fascist, and she cries, "But I don't control the railways or the flow of commerce." And they're telling me, I guarantee you, Lucy didn't get that gag. But also buried beneath that, really beautifully, not far beneath the surface, but deep enough and skillful enough that it's not putting off the kids, is a story about feminism. It's a deeply feminist film, and it's quite upfront, going, the patriarchy is the bad guy. And obviously, I mean, I doubt Lucy knows what the patriarchy is, but that doesn't seem to have bothered her.
Nope. This is I said just before that this is a Pixar. This is almost the reverse Pixar effect, where it's realistically, this is an adult movie dressed as a kids movie, and where we've said that you can go to a Pixar movie and its primary audience is that younger audience, but they've always got those jokes in there for the adult, for the family and things like that. This is the reverse, where it's ridiculous. This looks so much like a better shot version of the Aqua Barbie song music video, and it shouldn't look good, but it looks fantastic. This is a story about a plastic character. It shouldn't be this deep, but it is. And not only is it mining these deep, very, very pertinent social questions and commentaries, it's doing it in such a fantastic way that Lucy, on the way home, was going, so is the patriarchy really that bad? And what is the patriarchy really? Because it's not about...
That's unbelievable. That's the greatest advertisement I could possibly hear for this film, is that an 11-year-old is asking those questions. And that, again, underlies, I think, the genius of this script, which I think, look, I haven't seen everything that's going to happen, but I would think should be absolutely nominated for best. There's apparently a question whether it's best adapted screenplay or best original screenplay. I will leave that up to Mattel and Warner Brothers and the Academy, but it should be in the conversation for best screenplay. And I had dinner with a friend of mine last night, and I was telling him how much it was, how good it was, and she just couldn't believe me that a Barbie film was that good. I'm like, it is that good. It should be in the conversation for best original screenplay. And I think it's amazing that it's actually prompted a young girl to actually ask what the patriarchy is and understand whether or not it's a good thing, a bad thing, or is it's being blown up beyond, into something it's not. And I think it's actually a pretty realistic conversation starter about the patriarchy. I'm sorry if you think we're raving lefties. Deal with it. We always have been. But what I think is, in fact, just takes us to another level of genius for me, is at the end, we've had conversations about this, and I've been accused of being a misogynist by various people for saying this, is that I feel like a lot of what Hollywood does in the feminist space, or trying to be diverse, is window dressing. And I guess the argument there is window dressing in of itself, even if it is window dressing, is it still worth doing because that representation in the past has been so bad, and that's another conversation.
Mhm.
But if we look at, and I'm going to go back to it. I'm sorry, everyone, but Ghostbusters 2016, Captain Marvel, a couple of my hobby horses, or Wonder Woman 84. We're going to be feminist by making every man in the film insufferably awful and stupid. And I'm like, okay, that's one way you could go about it. And look, I don't care at the end of the day a whole lot about it. And Wonder Woman was going to be just as bad without that. But that's, I think, a very, very lazy way of going about it. So I can't be bothered actually investing energy or creativity or talent into making a truly interesting story about this. So I'll just go the lazy route, making, we have a cast of female characters or a female character like Wonder Woman who's wonderful and they're amazing at everything she does, and all the men are horrible.
Yeah.
Lazy for me. And I think it puts off a lot of people who maybe would come to the party, and maybe I'm one of them. But they will put people off, and it really plays into the hands of people who go work, go broke.
It's the simple thing of, there is like the perpetual argument at the moment of, could they gender swap James Bond? Like, yes, they absolutely could, and I would be absolutely down for that if they actually made the fact that James Bond or Jane Bond or whatever they wanted to rebrand it for the female character, or maybe even go non-gendered perhaps, but actually bring that into the story and make that part of the compelling reason to do it, not just because you want to be able to tick a box and it's like, we changed Doctor Who's gender to a woman, now we're going to do it to everything else. Make it actually a part of the compelling story, because that would be a compelling story.
And I know we're going off track here a little bit, but I want to sort of bring it back here and go, but they didn't do this in Barbie.
No.
Yes, the Kens are dumb.
Yes.
And kind of ignorant. And the whole point where that Ken, so spoilers if you haven't seen it yet, so I'll give you a couple of seconds to keep moving because we haven't spoiled it yet. But Ken, when he comes back to Barbie Land and implements the patriarchy with all the other Kens, is kind of pretty dumb, like and moronic. And the corporate Mattel people, which are one of the few negative points of the film. I'll come back to that, but they are pretty dumb and all male as well. But what really ties it up in a bow nicely for me is the scene at the end where Barbies have taken back Barbie Land, and Ken's like, but it's always been Barbie and Ken, not just Ken. And there's actually a really beautiful scene, and I can't believe I'm saying it about a Barbie film. A beautiful scene between Barbie and Ken where Barbie actually very empathetically has a conversation with him about finding out who Ken is without Barbie. And the relationship between Ken and Barbie does not define who Ken is. And that leads to what I think is the scene where he has, I am Kenuff. And before anybody asks, I do have an I am Kenuff shirt already. But it's what I liked about that scene particularly was it wasn't just I think a lazier filmmaker just would have ended with Barbie giving the Kens a backhander and going a one-liner going, well, blah, 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 and, we're back in control, and, men are stupid, you're stupid. And made him look dumb, and he walks away with his tail between his legs. And a lot of people would have felt like that was a fitting outcome considering what they did. But they didn't. They didn't do that. They actually brought it back around to go, the patriarchy harms men too. It harms men by telling men, you are not enough. You'll never be enough. And if you don't have a gorgeous woman on your arm, by what the patriarchy defines is a woman worthy of your attention, which, again, does harm women again, but it is harming you as a man to go, you have to define yourself by your relationship. And I don't think it harms women. I'm not sitting here saying it's men are real victims or anything stupid like that. No. But the system of patriarchy where we have at the moment hurts everyone. And to a lesser degree, men are one of those victims. And it's beautiful and amazing that this film acknowledged that in such a skillful way. And I just sort of walked out feeling uplifted at the end of this film.
Absolutely agree. I genuinely, every element of this movie, except, when you mentioned about the Mattel executives, again, totally agree. That's the one slightly bum note in an otherwise phenomenal movie. Even going away from the main plot for Barbie and going to the mum and daughter.
America Ferrera is the mum.
America Ferrera and Sasha, Ariana Greenblatt. Their relationship and the conversation that they have throughout the movie, beautiful, wonderful, honest. And it was such a breath of fresh air in a movie that has absolutely no right or rhyme or reason to be as nuanced and as intellectual as it presents itself. I'm looking at a picture of Barbie and Ken in their car, and Ken just holding up his thing saying, "I never go anywhere without the rollerblades." I mean, it's absurd. It's absurd. And yet, we have used that to deliver such a wonderful message across everything. And even having Kate McKinnon is generally pretty good whenever she's in anything. And having her as Unusual Barbie, or whatever they...
Weird Barbie.
Yeah, Weird Barbie. And kind of just the story and the explanation for her version of Barbie, it's great. And it's like it kind of pulls in a little bit of the end of Toy Story 3 with the passing on of the toys to the new kid and things like that, and how they have this ongoing life beyond the player. It was brilliant. And even the narration by Helen Mirren and her talking, there's the scene where it's about emotional sort of like the visualization of beauty and things, and they literally call it out and say maybe they shouldn't have cast someone like Margot Robbie in this role for this movie.
If we step aside from the politics for a minute, the jokes land.
Yes.
Probably 90% of the time. Like, I laugh more at this film, and I can remember laughing at a film since maybe Ted. That was about 10, 15 years ago, Ted, I reckon. And I got fairness, I put my hand up before. When it comes to comedy, I'm maybe not a great measure. But like the scene where he's like, maybe you'll come by later and I'll play my guitar at you. And all the Kens are playing the same, it's Push by Matchbox 20. And I just lost it in the cinema at that moment. It was so fucking funny. Like, it's Greta Gerwig is a genius. She's an absolute genius. She and Noah Baumbach deserve a massive rap for this. And like, there was a story kicking around a week before it released where Margot Robbie got the rights to it by telling Mattel this could be a $1 billion film. But I guess I was just talking it up. Now I think it's made $700 million in the first couple of weeks.
This isn't going to stop for a while.
I think this is going to go on to make over $1 billion. What I find fascinating about the film is that I hinted at it earlier. The American conservatives in particular have lost their shit about it, going, "Oh my god, it's not a kids' film! It's not a kids' film! It's not a kids' film!" And I'm like, did you see the trailer where they had a 2001: A Space Odyssey trailer where Margot Robbie is the monolith and the little girls around her with the dolls? And I'm like, who saw a trailer referencing 2001: A Space Odyssey and thought, my kids would enjoy a film full of 2001: A Space Odyssey references? It's a 60-year-old film, but they'll get it, right?
I remember when that trailer came out, you and I both watched it and we went, I have no idea what this movie is going to be, but I'm in.
And that film's in the scenes in the film at the start.
Yeah.
And I just like, did you guys not see any of the trailers or any of the material about the film before it came out? Because if a film about feminism was going to bother you, then those trailers would have told you that's what this film was. But, well, they've already apparently greenlighted a sequel, which is not surprising. Apparently Margot Robbie's involved. Apparently Greta is less keen to be involved. I would wonder if you could catch lightning in a bottle like this twice, but Mattel's going to go on and make their cinematic universe with like a Barney film and a Polly Pocket film, which apparently is being directed by Lena Dunham.
Okay. Who knows? We'll see.
I want Ryan Gosling to get an Oscar. I want this to get Best Original Song for "I'm Just Ken," because it's an absolute banger. And I don't think I've ever left the cinema. I haven't left the cinema in such a long time, and maybe Endgame. In fact, maybe further back, maybe The Avengers was the last time I went out of a cinema and said, I need to see that again.
Before we start talking about our negative, I also want to do a special call out to Alan. Michael Cera. He like we talked about it in Speed Racer with those two actors knowing what part they are and what movie they're in. Michael Cera really nailed the role of Alan.
It was a perfect role, and that highlights another positive. Just aside from Michael Cera's performance, they went deep. Like they had access to the Barbie archives, and I'm like, I am not an aficionado of Barbie lore, but like they've gone in, they've picked out some super obscure like people. I've met people going, oh, I had a Skipper doll, and I had a Midge doll, and oh, my mum had the Alan doll or something, and you're like, wow, they went deep into the back catalog of Mattel characters. But I enjoyed Michael Cera a lot in this.
Entirely entertaining, absolutely brilliant.
I don't think anybody wasn't great at it. But to talk about the negatives, you mentioned the Mattel character, the Mattel bosses. I think it was the bum note in the sense. I don't think it really stuck the landing on that storyline where when Barbie goes to the real world, she visits Mattel headquarters. They tried to put her back in the box. They never really fully explained why the Mattel bosses are worried about her being not in Barbie Land anymore. And then they follow her to Barbie Land and do nothing.
Yeah, it was. Will Ferrell was very much in a similar kind of role to what he played as the Overlord.
Lord Business in Lego Movie, right? It's so much like that.
That's exactly it. And it was like, okay, he's not sort of like Morgatu from Zoolander absurd, which almost would have fit in this movie. But at the same time, it was a little bit the fact that it was all men in the boardroom and the things like that. So like, okay, I get your point. And they were all kind of dumb and just doing dumb things. It's like, okay, you're kind of going a little bit Wonder Woman 84 here, where it's just like, okay, you're not really giving me a reason why. This is the joke, isn't it? And it's the weakest joke. And
that
when
said,
everything else is up here, that joke,
it really stood out because it just wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible.
Yeah. And it was entertaining to have like the borderline Scooby-Doo kind of chasing through the cubicles, which is a little bit Matrixy as well through that sequence with all
definite Matrix influence there. Yeah, you couldn't.
It's in there.
I overall, I just like what a treat it was to go back to the movies and see this. And I guess spoiler alert, but in my opinion, you have a second treat awaiting you with the other half of Barbenheimer.
I can believe that.
Well, what a weird 1-2 punch that is.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that both filmmakers are on board with it. Greta Gerwig is going on to do Narnia films, I think, with Netflix, which is interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
It'll be interesting to see how they adapt that, considering the very, very religious element of the books. Are they gonna keep that? Is she gonna update it? Is she gonna sort of like morph it into something more of just a generic fantasy thing?
They kept that in. It was all in there in the films that came out in the 2005, 2006, the earlier Narnia films. They didn't disguise the fact that Aslan was Jesus, and like, I mean, I don't know how you don't, because it's kind of such an essential element of a book. But okay, good luck to you, Dredd. I don't know. It's a great career. I don't know about that, but I hope they're paying her well, because she's now directed the highest grossing film ever directed by a woman.
Yep.
And I think it's going to go well over $1 billion. So Mattel's going to make a lot of money, and good luck to her. She gets to make whatever she wants after this. She's a genuine talent.
Yeah, absolutely wonderful. Should we move on to Coneheads?
From the sublime to the ridiculous, as usual on this show, we didn't pick Coneheads. The wheel picked Coneheads.
No one's fault but fate.
Here's a weird thing, all right? So I watched this last week.
Yeah.
I didn't hate this. I remember seeing it in the 90s. I guess I hired it on video from good old Fountain Flicks at Corio Village because, remember again in the 90s, you just didn't have much to pick from. You kind of, it's got Dan Aykroyd in it. I like Dan Aykroyd. I'll hire the video, even though I think it's based on a SNL skit from the 70s. A really old SNL skit. And we never got SNL on TV in Australia, so no idea what that is. But, Wayne's World worked, so apparently this got greenlit based on that old sketch. Aliens with canonical craniac crash land on Earth. That's a very humorous little synopsis. So
family takes over a farm.
Dan Aykroyd and Jane Curtin play Beldar Conehead and Primat Conehead, respectively. They are aliens. Mm-hmm. They crash land on Earth whilst being surveying it as part of a plan to take over the Earth at some point in the future, and are forced to basically live amongst humans as humans until they can be rescued at some point later in the future.
Which takes years.
Thereabouts. Yeah, probably more because their daughter, she's, turns out Primat is pregnant at the time they crash land, and the daughter is a teenager by the time they are rescued. So it'll be more like, 15, 16 years or thereabouts. They are human passing, but apart from having cone-shaped heads. Hopefully you've seen the poster and you have some idea of what we are talking about. Mm-hmm. And it's basically your standard fish out of water tale with everybody conveniently overlooking the fact that they have cone-shaped heads. And we say pass off by saying, we are from France. Which apparently their French weren't too keen on. So... if the French pisses the French off, I'm on board. This film does not have a good rating. It has a 5.4 out of 10 on IMDb and a 49 Metascore. I didn't check Rotten Tomatoes, but what a cast!
This is the late 80s, early to mid 90s
dream team of comedy.
Raw gold in there. Yeah.
So we have Dan Aykroyd and Jane Curtin as our main stars, who are actually really fucking good in this. But Jane Curtin is probably the lesser known of the two. But you probably know her face because she's been in stuff.
From the Sun, damn it.
Which I think was also written by the writers of this movie, if I'm not mistaken. But we have, of course, the great Dan Aykroyd. We have Michael Richards, he of Seinfeld fame. Basically playing Kramer as a motel clerk. Sinbad, Phil Hartman, Adam Sandler, David Spade, Michael McKean, Drew Carey, Jason Alexander, Joey Lauren Adams, Parker Posey, Chris Fallon, Julia Sweeney, Ellen DeGeneres, Dave Thomas. Most of these are fair. Tom Arnold pops up in an uncredited role. John Lovitz in an uncredited role. Most of these are, sort of one spot, one scene kind of roles, and they move on to the next thing. But they tend to add up. I guess the main ones in there who you see a lot of are Michael McKean and David Spade.
Yeah.
Are our bad guys as the people who work for the INS who are trying to deport the Coneheads because they think they're illegal immigrants or illegal aliens. The running gag.
The scene on the boat where he's just there, go home, we can't fix all of the world's problems anymore. It's like, okay. I feel like that one line and that one sequence was the seed that Team America was really spawned from,
Or even the scene when they are taken back to the planet, which Remulac, where they are held captive. again, Michael McKean gives them a speech about how they can't solve the galaxy's problems and there are no jobs back in the United States. And he plays it again with a really straight bat. He realizes what film he's in.
Yeah.
Very underrated actor. And he's hilarious the whole time.
Yeah.
Chris Farley is the love interest in this film of the Conehead's girlfriend, who I'm going to quickly find, who played by Michelle Burke, Connie Conehead.
Connie Conehead, yes.
And Chris Farley, what a talent he was. What he would have done in his career if he hadn't passed away so young. But he's fantastic in this, in one of the more meaty roles that he didn't do with. Interestingly, of course, he was famous for working with David Spade. They're both in this film. They don't share a scene.
No. I feel like Jack Black needs to pay tribute to Chris Farley for the energy and the physicality that he brings to it. There's so much of, especially earlier, younger Jack Black, that you kind of go, huh, all right, there's a Chris Farley influence right there, and there's another one and another one.
But did you know that Chris Farley was originally cast as Shrek? Shrek was written for Chris Farley.
Yes, that's right.
And so, he would have done that before Michael. So Mike Myers did it. But you do see what it could have been. You kind of see that character and kind of going, what would Chris Farley have done with that? I mean, it's hard to imagine him not doing Mike Myers as the Scottish character, but I never thought of Jack Black as a Chris Farley standard. But if they ever make a Chris Farley movie, Jack would be it. Maybe he's a bit too old now.
Yeah.
But the reason I mentioned the cast is maybe that's why this film is so inoffensive. But it's kind of everybody who does even a small part has some, incredible heritage to why they're doing it. Maybe they were involved in the original sketches. They're SNL alumni, like Farley and Spade and co. It's everyone in it. Jason Alexander's in it as the next door neighbor with that terrible wig. Everyone in it is just doing their best work, I think. And I don't know, I kind of found it mildly amusing.
I found it rather amusing, and I think the reason why it works for me is because, for all intents and purposes, this is a sketch show, just hung together with a through line of the Coneheads. And just like the sequence where Sinbad helps Galdar get a green card with Adam Sandler's character. It's like Galdar doesn't really say anything or do anything in that except repeat occasional things that Adam Sandler says to him. Adam Sandler is just in that sort of like Bronxy, New Yorky style, kind of sleazy underworld kind of guy. And it's just funny because he's just talking, and the fact that he just keeps on responding every time Galdar says something. So like, hey, Galdar, great, how are you doing? Yeah, about that. And he just plays it, and then the story just moves on. And then
hey, where are you from? Brockton, Massachusetts. Hey, my mother's from there. It's watching one of the roles I've enjoyed Adam Sandler in the most, and he's in one scene.
Yeah.
It's again, you can kind of see the fact that he was going to be a major movie star because he's so watchable. Even in the one scene, he stands out as his talent is on full display. I don't know. Maybe it's just because it's the kind of film that doesn't get made anymore. It's kind of a mid-budget, lowbrow, low-rent sort of comedy based on a 5-minute sketch of a sketch. And you sort of note, like, it's not like a traditional, scene. It's just sort of almost like pictures of a life of the Coneheads, the DeCiceros of, New Jersey or whatever it is they're from. It's it was fun. I don't know. I kind of dug it.
The other thing about this movie, let's just say it right now. It's under an hour and a half. It knows that the premise isn't going to last longer than that. So it's like, all right, we'll get from A to B. What is the starting point is aliens crash on Earth. Okay, the middle point is they actually realize they prefer Earth. The twist is they get picked up and they return back. Well, we can't destroy the Earth. because that's not funny. So we need to find another way to end it. So, okay, we know where everything is. We know the beats of the story. Let's just string everything along in between that. Boom. Nice, simple, clean. Quick.
Done. Guess what it needs to do and gets out.
Yep.
Filmmakers today could learn something from it. I don't know what the obsession with making your films in 3 hours is. I, for one, this is a nice trip back to the 90s when this kind of film was made and enjoyable. And gosh, I dug it. I kind of did.
Even
stupid.
The visual gags and things, like there's scenes where Geldar and Primat are in bed and they're just chatting and things like that, and then the camera pans back and their beds are upright. And it's like that's just funny.
The sight gags are it's dumb. It's not deep. There's nothing special going on, but it's actually some of the gags made me laugh. And I guess the immigration angle is still relevant. They were kind of onto something there. It's something that Americans were getting pretty fussy about. It was a real treat, actually, in a way. Like, I'm not going to say this is the most amazing film. You have to see it, not like Barbie.
No.
It's never a game changer, but maybe it's worth revisiting it if you saw this in the 90s and wrote it off as a pile of shit. But I don't think it is, actually. I think it might have been a little bit more substantial than we were giving it credit for. At least it was a distraction for an hour and a half. I didn't hate it.
Yeah, it was not a bad, for everything that could have come through, it was not a bad choice.
Should we do the business and spin the wheel? Okay, so how far back this week are we going? Oof.
50 years?
50 years. We are going back to 1973.
All right, so 1973, what
is American Graffiti?
Oh boy. Oh, I've tried watching this in the past.
I've never seen it myself, but this is, of course, George Lucas's debut directorial feature.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be fair, I haven't done a check to see how available these films are. This week, the films were pretty well known. 10 years ago, I was kind of hoping for a one to come up there because 10 years ago was Snowpiercer. But the only real shitbag film of the week this year, if we'd gone back 20 years, we would have been watching American Wedding.
Ooh.
I think it might be the third American Pie film.
Is oh that doesn't sit right with me.
Anyway, we are going back 50 years to American Graffiti. You can rent it or buy it at the usual places if you're so inclined. It's about teenagers or something in the 50s.
A couple of high school graduates spend one final night cruising the strip with their buddies before they go off to college.
I think this might have been also the film that gave us Han Solo and Indiana Jones, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was this film that
a Harrison Ford performance in there got him in the door. Yep, absolutely.
That's because of course the story is that he was working as a carpenter, I think, on Star Wars because George knew him from his work on American Graffiti. He asked him to read with some of the actors, I think auditioning for Luke, and in the end, he was the best.
Yep.
At least that's the myth anyway. Whether it's true or not, who knows?
Who knows?
We're actually doing pretty well on time, so let's go to Binge Browse. We didn't do it last time. It's back. So what are you seeing on the box?
So I've got 2 new seasons to talk about, and one of them is a dumb binge, and that is on Stan. We have got the adaptation of PlayStation car combat game Twisted Metal.
That's one of mine as well.
Have you watched all of it?
Not all of it yet. We are 5 episodes in.
Okay. So this is it follows a Motormouth outsider is offered a chance at a better life but only if he can successfully deliver a mysterious package across a post-apocalyptic wasteland filled with such characters such as Stephanie Beatrice Quiet, who most people younger will probably either know her from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, or she was Mariella, I want to say, from Encanto. She did the voice of that, the main character there. And we have got the body of Samoa Joe, WWE and AEW wrestler, and the voice of Will Arnett for the iconic Sweet Tooth the Clown. We've got Thomas Hayden Church in there as Agent Stone. And then Neve Campbell in there as a couple of cameo episodes. We have also got Jason Mantzoukas, who is a face you're going to go, oh, I recognize him from stuff. I found myself addicted to this because it seems to be the tagline of this episode. It knows what it is. It's fucking dumb, but it's entertaining. And this is the first time that I have watched Anthony Mackie in something and gone, I like this guy.
No, you're right. It's almost it's one of the better things he's done, other than he was okay as Falcon. But yeah. I think Falcon really only works when he's in it with something else, like the Falcon Winter Soldier show kind of works. Did you ever play the video game?
Yes. I invested quite a bit of time on this, and it's a shit game. It's a dumb game. It's a stupid game, but it was fun. It was entertaining. It was stupid, and it looked god awful. It still does. It looks even worse now. But it was entertaining, and they somehow went, you know what? We can actually create something from this. Here we go. Thanks, Travis.
See, for those who are watching the live stream or catching up later and just sharing some gameplay footage here from the original Twisted Metal game, which I didn't have a PlayStation, so I never played it. I never heard of it actually before I started reading the stuff about the TV show about it. As you can see, graphics. Well, it was probably pretty decent for the time, I guess.
For the time, but this is actually kind of accurate to its frame rate.
Anyway, so that's that. Exciting stuff. I don't have a connection with the game at all, so barely even heard of it. And I remember hearing about the adaptation going, some random game from the 90s. Is why? It's not like it's got a built-in fan base. Like The Last of Us, arguably one of the biggest games in the world in the last 10 years. Millions and millions of copies sold. Okay. Fallout, again, huge built-in fan base. Okay. Millions of copies people are going to watch for that. Twisted Metal? Mario! Everyone's played fucking Mario.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to go, Twisted Metal? But and I thought the trailer looked stupid.
Yeah.
My lord, it's really entertaining. Like, we actually have had to stop ourselves. The reason we haven't watched it all is because so many of our other shows are not being made at the moment because of a writer's strike. Which, solidarity, guys. And so little of our stuff is getting made. All the other shows are finished or in the process of finishing. So what else do? You check out the first episode of a new show on Stan, and it's actually ridiculously entertaining for the most part. I'm like, this has no business being this entertaining.
No.
But it's at least the first 5 episodes I've watched, what I've enjoyed about it is rarely is it falling into the tired old tropes you find so many television shows falling into. It happens occasionally, and you're like, could you not?
Yeah.
In episode 5, one of the characters' dead brother appears in her imagination and has a conversation with her in the car, and you're like a Force ghost, and you're like, it's lame. It's a really lame, tired trope. I really didn't enjoy when it did that because there's not much to it. It's pretty paper thin, but it constantly seems to subvert my expectations. Like, as you said, it knows what it is. It knows what it's doing. And it kind of gets to an impasse and it goes, you think I'm going right, but I'm going left. Every time it picks the right direction to go, where it sort of it almost seems to acknowledge, hey, this is a trope. I get what this moment is a trope. Let's go the non-trope way. It's incredibly violent and gruesome, which I think I don't know if that was true to the game or not, but
games are pretty violent, but it was all car based. But yeah, this is car combat if done for like teenagers instead of the art community like Mad Max was. This is if just try to imagine if Judd Apatow and Seth Rogen had just been given the script for Mad Max instead of George Miller. That's kind of the ballpark that you're getting. It's like, okay, this is dumb. This is stupid. There's a lot of childishness to this. But they know what they're doing. They've made it work.
It somehow constantly keeps working. It's
like Speed Racer. The action in the cars is good, and the stuff out of the cars is good, and it keeps it going. And they use the basic premise idea of what I said could have been used for Speed Racer if they'd done it differently, and what made Terminator, like I talked about previously. It's a journey story. It's a journey movie. He's got his reason, he's got his end game, and then everything along the route. It keeps literally, physically keeps the story progressing forwards. You never stay too long with any one character, so you never get bored with anyone. You never get overloaded. You always end up sort of like, oh, it's cut away from Sweet Tooth. Okay, yeah, that's cool. All of the characters are kind of one note, but entertaining, and so you don't want to spend too long with them, because the longer you're with them, the more you realize that they are just one note. But it's okay, because we jump to another one, and another one, and another one.
And Sweet Tooth, I think, is the breakout character from this for me. I think he's only in a few episodes, correct?
He goes through
So anyway, I would not be surprised if they decide to make more. I don't know what happens to that character, and no spoilers if there is a spoiler to be given. But I'd like to see more of that character, because you're right. Samoa Joe, Will Arnett, Marriage Made in Heaven. I'm having fun with this series, and I like being surprised, and I was very surprised.
I will tell you something. Episode 7 is one to look forward to.
Okie dokie.
Yes.
We will, if I let it, Michelle would have binged. I would have binged all these on the weekend. But I'm like, we're gonna get to Thursday night this week. We're gonna get to Thursday night. We're gonna be looking at each other, going, "What do you want to watch?" There's nothing we want to watch because all of our shows are finished. We've got a couple episodes in their half hours. They're in, they're out, they're gone.
Yep. Lovely. What's your nomination?
My first one, well, that was going to be Twisted Metal, but the other one I'd like to talk about is The Bear.
This is now
this is
right.
It's on Disney Plus in Australia, so this is season 2. Ridiculously, it took a month at least after it was released in the United States on Hulu for it to land on Disney Plus. Like, honestly, apparently no one watches TV and you're all losing money. You know, if you can't deliver it to your audience globally, when your audience in America gets it, I'm just going to steal it. You know, someone's stealing it. I mean, I would much rather watch it on the streaming service I pay for, because it makes it feel like I'm getting value. But anyway, rant over. A young chef from the fine dining world returns to Chicago to run his family's sandwich shop. In season 1, we meet Kami, played by Jeremy Allen White. He's worked in Michelin-starred kitchens around the world. He returns to Chicago to run his family's beef sandwich store called Beef of Chicago after his brother kills himself. His brother, played by, occasionally in flashbacks, by Joe Bernthal. And it was brilliant. The playoff between Kami and his sous chef, who he hires as a young sous chef played by Ayo Edebiri, Sydney Adamu, is fantastic. And we get this whole cast of characters who work in and around the shop, including some of Kami's family and long-time friends. At the end of the season 1, I don't want to spoil it, but there's a particular moment that kind of sets up what's going to happen in season 2. So you kind of do need to watch all of season 1 to get to season 2. Season 2 sees them closing down the beef sandwich shop and reopening the restaurant as a fine dining establishment, and the struggles that they go through to get that to happen, including money and developing a menu, finding staff, and also Kami sort of dealing with his family and what he's been through in the past and his history. It's a slow start. Season 2 has been given, wide acclaim. The first 10 minutes of episode 1, we're like, I don't know what's going on here, but I don't know why it's so amazing, but I want to hurry up and get there. And it fucking does. When it gets up and starts cranking, it starts cranking out television like this is when we say we've come out of a golden age of television, this is golden age of television level writing and acting. So we get to and this is actually a show that made me think of you, because there's most of the episodes are about half an hour.
Nice.
Until episode 6, which is called Fishes. And that one goes for over an hour. So it's double the length of an episode, any of the other episodes, which is back to your original point. You come back to again, you own the streaming service, Disney. You can do whatever the fuck you want. You don't have to worry about commercials. Do whatever you want. And so they did whatever the fuck they wanted. And episode 6, Fishes, might be the most stressful hour of television I can possibly imagine. And we're not talking like, something like Die Hard or someone being held at gunpoint or an aircraft being, hijacked. No violence, not no violence, but it's just a family Christmas dinner. And I think anybody who's been through one of those knows they can be incredibly stressful, emotional events.
Yeah.
And that's what that episode's about. And it took me 2 tries to actually watch it. The first time I watched it was after a really long day at work. And after 10 minutes, I'm like, I just don't have the emotional energy for this tonight. I'm going to watch like car crashes on dash cams on YouTube or something instead. But it's spectacular television. What I love about this season in particular is we don't just spend our time on our main 2 characters, Sydney and Kami, trying to get the restaurant up. There's stuff going on with them as well. But we spend an entire episodes with other characters in the ensemble who make up the people working at this restaurant. And we spend a half hour just on their story. You can tell the show has a pretty high acclaim now because there are some pretty big name actors popping up in very small parts. So episode 4 has one of the characters, the pastry chef, is sent to train for a couple of weeks in Copenhagen at one of the finest restaurants in the world. And Will Poulter pops up as the main star of the episode alongside the main character. We see in Fishes, we have some pretty incredible faces pop up here. We have Bob Odenkirk pop up in this episode. We have Academy Award winner Jamie Lee Curtis pop up as Kami's mother. We have Gillian Jacobs, probably best known for her role in Community, pop up in here as well. John Mulaney, Sarah Paulson. One episode these guys are in, pretty much. And that's the kind of level of talent this show's attracting now. So I'll shut up now, but other than to say that if you're it's not hard to watch except for that one episode. It's fucking brilliant television. Brilliant storytelling, brilliant acting. Loved it. Amazing.
Nice. Very nice. Okay. My one, which will be my last one for today, so we don't get too long in the tooth. It's a browse. And it is the final season of Jack Ryan on Prime Video. This is John Krasinski, Wendell Pierce, Michael Kelly, Abby Cornish as your main characters, with what's his face? Ant-Man's friend in the first 2 movies.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Him turning up as Domingo Chavez. This is a bit of a lame duck, I suppose, for its the final season that is trying to tie a few little things together, but honestly, I don't remember all of them. Like Abby Cornish was in season 1, but she hasn't been in season 2 or 3 to my memory. She's entertaining, she's good in this, and she does her role well, but it's very much we talk about the evolution earlier on today of female roles, and how it's, if we're going to use these characters and use their sex as part of their character, then use it to do something compelling. They don't really do anything with that here for Abby's what is her name, Kathy. It's painfully obvious what's going to happen to her from the first meeting that she has with a character that isn't Jack Ryan. So like, yep, I'm going to call that one right now, and I'm going to win myself $100. Thank you very much. Yeah, I got it right. Well done. You don't need my superpower to tell exactly what's going to go on there. But everyone knows their role. The action, there isn't a whole lot of it, but it's okay. It tries to push the envelope somewhat with a torture sequence of Jack, which is a little bit hard. It might be hard for particularly sensitive people to watch, because there's sort of like electrocution and waterboarding and some of the more overtly vicious torture elements that have crept their way into sort of like more hard-hitting action movies these days. But otherwise, it's a bit of a disappointment, considering how good season 1 and season 2 delivered on a story and kept it compelling. And season 2, I think it was, had Numi Rapace in it, and she was doing things slightly more interesting with a female in the spy world. It was they were actually utilizing that to tell a little bit of a narrative. Now, maybe a lot of this difficulty with kind of the character development for them is baked into the Jack Ryan stories, but that's not really an excuse anymore when you can mutate the source material to serve it and to update it. And it wouldn't have taken much to update these and just put a little bit of pepper in there, but they don't. It's fine. As we are not going to be having anything new for a while, you might as well watch it. The episodes are just under an hour long each episode, which is a bit long for some of them. You're kind of going, all right, okay. But it keeps you. It's a very comfortable browse. Doesn't do anything overtly wrong. It's just, could have been better.
So if you like spy stuff, that's probably
100%.
Might be more your jam. I like some of the Tom Clancy, Jack Ryan films, but this one didn't appeal.
Yeah.
I just like to quickly. I don't know if I covered Black Mirror, if I actually talked about the new season of Black Mirror, but that would take me longer than the couple of minutes we have left. So I'll park that and just quickly cover the first episode of the new season of Futurama, which is back again. I think this might be the third time it's been cancelled and rebooted.
I'm back. It is the show that cannot get killed, and I am both thankful and scared about it, because every time it's like, oh, can they recapture it?
No, well, I've only watched episode 1 of season 11. How is it they've been on TV for so long in different forms at only 11 seasons? That's amazing.
Yeah.
So there's a couple more to go. It's okay. It's not Simpsons bad. Like, if you watch a new episode of The Simpsons these days, you're like, oh, God. For such an influential show, for the first 10 seasons, The Simpsons has really gone downhill. Futurama is not that bad. The Impossible Stream is called the episode. Fry risks permanent insanity when he attempts to binge watch every TV show ever made. It is a nice, subtle skewering of streaming services, which is nice considering I think it's Hulu has bought it back.
Hulu.
So it's all right. It's distracting.
Yeah.
It's not Futurama at its absolute searing satirical best, but it's fine. It's
Yeah.
it's all right. I would say, you don't be too scared.
Okay.
It's not doing anything egregious to destroy its legacy. It's just okay.
Okay. All
That'll
right.
sit squarely in the browse category because I haven't been tempted at this stage to go back for another episode.
Yeah. Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Rounding applause for Twisted Metal for coming out of nowhere and just being dumb entertainment, which sometimes that is absolutely okay for people to consume and create, because it just goes, yep, this is our box, we're going to play in it, and we are going to color to the lines, and it's going to be everything that you want, nice and simple. It's good. It's not a bad thing to, be dumb sometimes.
We do it every couple of weeks.
Yes, we do. So, to recap the show, ladies and gentlemen, we talked about the chain movie of the week, which was Speed Racer. We have picked Smokin' Aces as our next link in the chain for that one. We talked about part 1 of Barbenheimer, Barbie, and rousing the success that movie is. Congratulations, very well earned on that one. We also talked about This Time So Many Years Ago. We went back to Coneheads. And next show, we will be going back 50 years to American Graffiti, the George Lucas directorial debut. We had a little bit of a chat about Twisted Metal. We talked a little bit about Jack Ryan and Futurama at the end there. Was there another one? No, The Bear.
The Bear.
Yes. The Bear, yes, thank you. Next week, we are Smokin' Aces. We are doing American Graffiti. I want to get a little bit more time in to talk about Baldur's Gate 3 as well.
This is a video game, yes?
It is the new video game that is absurd. I have been in the beta for a little while, and it absolutely captures the essence of D&D in a video game. It's wonderful. And of course, we will be talking Oppenheimer as well. So a very uplifting show for next week, ladies and gentlemen.
Fun and games all the time.
Yeah! On that note, thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget that you can follow us on twitch.tv/Friedbrain Productions, Armchair Producers, youtube.com/Friedbrain Productions, facebook.com/Armchair Producers, at Evil Trav, at the Fried Brain on the... It's no longer Twitter. It's the X.
X.
On
Fuck
X.
that.
Yes, we are... No, we're not verified, so therefore we are not X-rated. We're fun for all the family. But yes, apologies for anyone. I didn't realize that I had not pushed publish on the last episode. That is now up and ready to go. This one will be up later on tonight for your consumption purposes. Until next time, thank you very much. Good night.